afternoon and welcome to our weekend program, our Saturday Sports Special, where we speak with the movers and shakers in sports, the sports administrators, including the sportsmen, sportswomen as well. Well, on our program this afternoon, rather, our special guest is no stranger to sports and sports administration in particular. He is Mr. Mike Fennell, the chairman of the Local Organizing Committee of the CARIFTA Games to be staged in Jamaica over the Easter weekend. Well, Mr. Fennell, as I indicated, is no stranger to this level of organization since he was a former president of the Jamaica Olympic Association for 40 years and also had a 13-year tenure as the president of the Commonwealth Games Federation. And Mr. Fennell, no doubt, is a very busy man these days because the CARIFTA Games, after a 2-year hiatus, it's really battle stream. Lots have been happening over the past few weeks and days in particular. And Mr. Fennell will be giving us an update as to all that's happening in terms of the preparations for the CARIFTA Games. Let me welcome Mr. Mike Fennell, live from Kingston in Jamaica, and saying good afternoon to you, Mr. Fennell.
Good afternoon, Michael, and thank you very much for having me. And good afternoon to all your viewers and listeners or whoever is connected. Good to be with you all.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Fennell has indicated so much to talk about regarding the CARIFTA Games. We into more or less the home stretch. What can you tell us regarding the level of preparation we are now regarding the staging of the CARIFTA Games come the Easter weekend in Jamaica?
Well, there's quite a lot to say, but let me just start by saying that I ask everyone to remember that we were given a very short period of time to organize these games because originally Ghana should have been the host, but for a variety of reasons they had to say they couldn't do it on this occasion. And it was only in August of last year that our J3s was asked by NACAC if they could undertake this. When President Garth Gale approached me as if I would be chairman in September, I thought he was talking about 2023 because that's the normal time you'd get to put things together. And he said, no, this is for 2022. I said, whoa, we've got to work hard. But I accepted this challenge, and all of the team that we've put together have all accepted the challenge because we work as a team to do something to ensure that the CARIFTA Games did not have another hiccup because, as you know, they were not held. We needed to ensure that we got back on track because we all consider how important it is an athletic event for the region and for the development of athletics and athletes in the region and for sport generally. So having said that, we had a lot of work to do, but we were very fortunate. First, in terms of the track meet itself, the track and field meet. Fortunately, we have had a number of, or every year we have a number of events that meet the highest possible standards. So it was not difficult to comprise the level of officials, technical officials and others, and the necessary equipment to run a proper thing at our national stadium. So we have an excellent track. It was resurfaced last year, has grade 1 classification from World Athletics, etc. And we have a well-tuned officials team that can run to the highest possible standards required by World Athletics. So that's in place. But we still need to ensure that the training and refinement of the operations for such an important track meet as the CARIFTA Games is in place, and that is ongoing under the leadership of the Honorable Ian Forbes, who is the overall meet director. So that's in place. The next challenge would be to find a required accommodation at a reasonable cost. And as you know, in this area, there's no shortage of hotel rooms, but the price is very, very high. Just cannot be afforded. And we're fortunate to get the Rex Nettleford Hall at the University of the West Indies, which has hosted previous groups in the past, particularly during the holiday period for various events. and that provides us with good accommodation and with contracted caterers, etc., so that we got that in place. The third area, of course, is how do we finance this? And we all must acknowledge that the CARIFTA Games is not a big spectator event. So we cannot expect spectator revenues to provide the financing for all the critical areas. Although we will be promoting it and trying to maximize the spectator attendance. But we are extremely fortunate that the government of Jamaica, through the Minister responsible for sport, the Honourable Olivia Babsy-Grange, came forward and responded with substantial sponsorship, which assisted us. In addition to that, of course, we've been able to attract a number of other sponsors, and the list of sponsors you'll see there that have come aboard and will be assisting us to meet the expenses. Despite all of that, we have to keep our budget very close because we do not have a lot of money to work with. The other area that, of course, overshadowed everything else was the COVID-19 pandemic. Right. As you know, Jamaica and every other country has to have special regulations, conditions, and so on to ensure the safety and well-being of all the participants, athletes, officials, spectators, relatives, families, etc. And we are operating with a lot of uncertainty. And as we speak, we're happy to say that last week, the government repealed what is called in Jamaica the Disaster Risk Management Act. That act provided for special national conditions related to all events, not just sport, but all events, and had some very severe restrictions. The situation with COVID in Jamaica had reached a stage where the government was satisfied that it could repeal that act, but we still have to bear in mind a few things. Firstly, the conditions for having any event at all, COVID or no COVID, still remain, so we have to satisfy those conditions. But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, COVID is still in the society. We still have COVID. Therefore, we have to ensure that we appeal to everybody as individuals, communities, or what have you, that they continue to practice very careful and precautionary measures such as self-hygiene, social distancing, and the wearing of masks. This is an individual situation where appeal to everybody that is still required. Vaccinations will not be required for either the competitors, spectators, officials, volunteers, etc. But we need to ensure that everybody practices good social practices in any event. And the last thing in that regard is that we will be continuing with our sanitization program, both at the main athletes venue, the village at Rex Nettlewood Hall, and at the stadium warm-up track, etc. We will be continuing with a solid program of sanitization throughout the period. I think that overall is a summary of where we are. We're expecting approximately 600, pretty close to 600 athletes in two age groups, under 20 and under 17, from 27 different countries taking part. And we're looking forward to excellent competition because the standard has remained high with our young athletes right around the region.
Mm-hmm. And even though, Mr. Fennell, that Jamaica hasn't hosted the CARIFTA Games in probably the last 10 years, the wealth of talent, one, that's on the track, and then the expertise as well in terms of hosting Boys and Girls Champs, Jamaica International, and other high-class meets. You can ascertain that in terms of the level of officiating and otherwise, that is on par as well.
Oh, absolutely. But as I said earlier, we're not taking this for granted. We're really having some sessions with all the athletes en masse and in sectors, rehearsals to ensure that they're all in top shape in officiating for this meet, because we owe the athletes, as you would accept and our listeners would accept, if we do not have proper officiating, the results will be questioned. And we're going to ensure that all the proper officials are in place and well tuned for such an important meet.
And there was also a report that there were an influx of people expressing interest in volunteering at the CARIFTA Games.
Yes, we did have. We appealed to some of the educational institutions like the G.C. Foster College, UTEC, University of the West Indies, some of the teachers' colleges, and so on, because we offer to them, and they accept this, that volunteering would be a part of their own personal development in helping them in their respective fields of study and also what they do after their study. So they've had excellent reaction in that regard. And interestingly, we've also asked for some volunteers who speak French. The language of this meet is English. There's no question. We're only obliged to provide English language because it's the language of NACAC, and that's the language. What we feel as a courtesy toward French-speaking countries, we'll have some people who speak French who can assist them in being more comfortable when they're here.
Okay. And you started by saying that the announcement to host the 49th staging of the games in Jamaica came on short notice. It was only, I think, probably November of last year. Usually, and it's traditional, I should say, that you have at least a minimum of a year to prepare and plan. How confident are you, Mr. Fennell, that Jamaica will pull it off?
We will. I have every confidence in that. We just have some areas that concern us, areas outside of our control, such as the air travel into Kingston. As you know, the airline seats that are available have been reduced considerably, and travel within the Caribbean has not been easy in any event. So air travel is a problem, and the cost of that air travel, not for us, but for the participating countries, because that's their expense. But to ease this, NACAC and the president of NACAC, President Mike Sands, and Keith Josephs have been very active in trying to arrange charters, and I know the Bahamas Air have been involved, and also from the Eastern Caribbean, we're trying to arrange with the airlines, etc., in addition to the normal scheduled air travel. So that is a struggle, and right now we're agonizing over the cost because some of the costs are really, really horrendous. The airlines have put up their costs, and it's not easy. But it's a fact we have to deal with, and we have to deal with it as best as we can. As I say, that's not a local organizing concern. It's a concern in terms of we want our visitors to be able to come here easily. But that's a challenge right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think there is a special charter they're arranging with Bahamas Air out of the Eastern Caribbean, I think from Barbados with the swimming. They're making some sort of arrangement that when Bahamas Air goes down to Barbados with the swimmers, it will move up to Jamaica with track and field for CARIFTA Games, something like that. But I've noticed and I've seen some of the correspondence back and forth. So it appears that things are in the works for that. What's about spectators, Mr. Fennell, for the CARIFTA Games?
We're going to be promoting for the spectators as best as possible. You have to understand, as I said earlier, let me acknowledge right up front that the CARIFTA Games have never been a high spectator event. Anyway, over the 49 years or 48 years. But we are promoting this in a different way. Firstly, the games are starting and will take place shortly after Champs in Jamaica. I think all your listeners will know what Champs is, boys and girls Champs. That's the biggest single track event for schoolers or school children or students anywhere in the world, and the hype and attention will be there, and they will be turning out for that. The other point on that score is that whilst we had restrictions on the number of spectators previously, with the the disaster risk management allowing 1,000 or 2,000, this has been relaxed, and whereby permission has been granted for us to utilize up to 70% of the capacity of the stadium. The grandstand, which has 5,000 seats, we can therefore accommodate up to 3,500 spectators in the grandstand, and the rest of the bleachers, which would hold the rest up to say 30,000. We are anticipating that we would get up to maybe 15, 16,000 there. However, it's on Easter weekend, and again in Kingston, a lot of people go out of town for the Easter weekend to go to the various parts of the island, beaches, and so on. But we are attracting them to come to the Saturday, Sunday, Monday sessions, and certainly we feel that we will get good response because of the young students who I think everybody wants to support. And my last point on this, we are at the moment mobilizing some sponsors for tickets for schools, so that the school students who will be on holiday will have some tickets for their students who can come and be a part of this and provide some of the spectators. So we're going to be promoting this, but remember, champs comes first, and we are in a way having to recognize their strength and to appeal to people thereafter to follow through and also come to our event as well.
Okay, and certainly that from champs, some of the best practices. By then, I'm certain that the CARIFTA Games, in terms of its preparation, would be, you know, into full gear by then. But certainly, you will want to use some of those things coming out from the boys and girls champs that you can probably use, even if it means refining a bit for the CARIFTA Games.
Oh, most certainly, and the ISA body, which is the Intersecondary Sports Association, which is run by the principals of the high schools, have done a fantastic job. You may recall last year that, in 2020, we didn't have champs at all. And in 2021, they were allowed to have this on a very restricted basis, and it was extremely successful without any repercussions. On this occasion, it's very open to all schools, and just the qualification process has taken place. And we're going to be ramping up champs now to the very open. But they will also have limited spectators based on what I said before. And certainly the hype for champs, we hope, will continue through into the CARIFTA Games. And I think the CARIFTA Games can benefit from that hype and that attention as an overflow from that event.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Fennell, you have been involved in sports administration for the better part of probably your life on earth. Your service to sports. I mean, the name Mike Fennell is synonymous, especially Commonwealth Games. As former president of the Commonwealth Games Federation as well. You were instrumental in reforming the whole Olympic Association in Jamaica in formative years back in 1977. And for probably 40 years, I've been president of the Jamaica Olympic Association. So you have seen, heard, and gone through quite a bit in terms of sports. And Jamaica as the leader of sports in the Caribbean and a world power, especially in track and field. How have you seen track and field in particular, more so, and by extension, the CARIFTA Games, has transformed, has evolved track and field athletes over the years, not just in Jamaica, but the entire Caribbean?
Well, Michael, there's no question that the sporting landscape has changed considerably since I started, right? There are more sports, there are a better spread of what is happening, and in the region, we're starting to recognize the importance of good, qualified coaching and support systems from the early stage. I say this because I think you would know and others would know that for a long time in the region, the coaching and so on came from friends, family, one or two coaches, etc. But nowadays we're having properly qualified coaches, which is a reflection of the work done by not only the international federations in athletics and other sports, but also the commitment locally for people to pursue a career in coaching and otherwise. That has been a big difference because now we're getting proper coaching, proper training of techniques, etc., going through into the senior ranks. We cannot underscore the importance of that because somebody having a talent for running or kicking a football is not sufficient and cannot succeed without proper coaching. It's no different in the creative arts world. You may be a good singer, but without proper training of your voice, etc., you cannot be successful. You may be an artist without proper training and following certain fundamentals. So I think that has been a big, big difference. In Jamaica, we have seen the advent of the GC Foster College, which has turned out very well trained sports instructors, people who pursue courses and degree courses in sports training and in sports sort of discipline totally in all respects. This has now been accompanied by the main university, University of the West Indies, and University of Technology, who have particular sporting disciplines in their curriculum, and the schools recognizing this. But I draw your attention to two things in particular. We have to regard sport and physical education or physical recreation more than just sport itself. It is a major input to the whole educational process. And perhaps my dissatisfaction is that the communities at large have not accepted that fully. They talk about sport as an event, the Olympic Games or CARIFTA Games or champs, but they don't realize how important it is to the educational process. The CARIFTA Games in Jamaica in April will help to remind us, especially as we're coming out of this COVID thing, that when students were not allowed to go to class and work from home, the damage that has been done to education because of the lack of sports and physical education. We have seen a real example of that from that thing. The second thing is that we have to remember that in the curriculum, we have had physical recreation, but not paid more than lip service to it. And I think we need to pay more attention to that. But perhaps more importantly, at the level of United Nations and the International Olympic Committee, they have recognized and also called on states, not sports administration, states to recognize the role of sports in national life, the role of sports in the recovery program from the pandemic, and the role of sports in the economy and education. These are all areas that are so important. That's why on the downside, I have to say with great regret that CARICOM as an institution has failed to recognize the importance of sport to the extent that there's no CARICOM sports desk or effective operation on sports from the CARICOM situation. And I'm hoping that with the attention we're paying to CARIFTA 2022, this will help to ignite or reignite some interest at the political level in CARICOM about the importance of sport in the region.
What a nice segue, because that was my next question to you, Mr. Fennell. The whole discussion regarding a deeper conversation among sports administrators and regional governments regarding sports. And when we say sports, we're not talking about cricket, because most times they believe it's about cricket. So we have Prime Minister, some subcommittee on cricket, and nothing on sports. So I'm glad you really mentioned that, and I assume you're really calling for a deeper conversation among sports administrators and regional governments regarding sports in the Caribbean.
It's absolutely essential. And I know that during the COVID period over the last 2 years, everybody has been on protection, preserving, and whatnot. One of the things I'm hoping that will emerge from this as a post-COVID activity is a new recognition of the elements that are so essential. Let me give you an example. One of the surveys has shown, not just in Jamaica, the impact on mental health of people not being able to do the normal things in life. Sports provides an avenue to correct that and to ensure that our mental health condition is improved. That's a very, very serious thing. So don't just look at sport as CARIFTA Games. Look at what it can contribute, and particularly to our youngsters. And that all around, I'm using this opportunity to make that appeal, because we do. Yes, I've been committed to sports for a very long time, but I come from the business community. I used to run a factory. I used to be in sales and marketing and so on. And I know how important it was to human relations and to the physical well-being of our people to have sports events at the factory level on weekends and so on. That contributed to the well-being of people. And we should not underestimate the value of sports to health and education, and in these areas that are so badly needed in our societies. The other area, of course, is discipline. You know that we are struggling with indiscipline and very serious problems in that area. Whenever we have an Olympics on and our runners are running at an Olympic Games, or we are taking part in a World Cup qualifying, or there's a test match and so on, the incidence of crime and violence goes down. And the last point is that the youngsters that we are catering to help, what other areas of endeavor do they have if we're not engaging them in sport and things like this? It's a major investment to not only the well-being of all, but also to the development of our young people.
Mm-hmm. There was a question which was posed for you, Mr. Fennell, but that's prior to the start of the program, regarding sponsorship and whether or not CARIFTA Games over the years have failed to capitalize on major sponsorship like the Adidas, the Nike, and Puma, etc., who basically just involved in sponsorship of elite athletes, but looking at sponsoring something as the CARIFTA Games or being involved in the CARIFTA Games.
That's a very correct statement, and let's just say that Puma is one of our sponsors for this CARIFTA Games, right? But it's a sort of hen and egg situation. You have got to make sure that your product is right. The way you present the product must be attractive to sponsors. Sponsors don't have a sum of money to give away, but the product must be right. We need to get the product right, and we need to be able to present it right. That's why, on the one hand, sport presentation, apart from just having the correct technical official, sport presentation is important. Secondly, in terms of broadcasting it, television, as you know, is the most powerful and most financially viable situation in sports events anywhere in the world, including the Olympic Games. But we've got to make sure that we have proper host broadcasting, which packages the product that can be used. We're doing on this occasion professional packaging of CARIFTA 2022. This is being done with a contract with Sportsmax, and they will have packaged an excellent product done professionally like any other first-class thing where people can take it and sell it. We will not benefit in 2022, but that's providing a basis for future CARIFTA Games to move forward and improve the product, which can then be sold at a better price. We must remember that both sides have to work. If you don't have the product right, then you won't get the money coming in. Sponsors do not have gifts around. They need value for money. And this is what we're trying to do with 2022 to establish a better base. A number of sponsors have come on board, and they've come on board because they also see the importance of the I don't want to use this program to promote them, because if you leave out one, I'll be accused. But this is something that we're working on, because I think if there has been any failure of CARIFTA over the 49 years, it has not been, it has been in not establishing proper standards of the product. Oh, I'm not talking about running and jumping, of the product as a total product to be able to sell to the outside world.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Yeah, and there's nothing as outside of boys and girls champs, as you indicated, there's nothing as the CARIFTA Games and this quality of track and field in the world. In terms of junior track and field, I should say, in the world, it's something that folks always look to be part of, and noting for a fact that many of our outstanding track and field athletes, even of yesteryear, Mr. Fennell, have come through the ranks of the CARIFTA Games, including
Absolutely, absolutely,
Jamaica's
yes.
Usain Bolt,
Yeah.
Veronica Campbell Brown, and etc. etc. So the importance of the CARIFTA Games cannot, cannot really underscore the importance of the as you indicated too, for regional governments, on one hand, and even for the business community to be involved, because it is also provides something for the society. And as indicated, when you have these international games, there's always seem to be subsiding of crime and violence among young people in particular. You know, um,
Yeah, but
there's one
let
other
me, let
thing.
me
Sorry,
before
yeah,
you go on, let me just
go
remind
ahead.
you that all that I've said was why the government of Jamaica responded in the way they have. They didn't have to. They responded in the way because
Mhm.
they've accepted those principles that I've stated. And I want
Right.
again pay credit to the government of Jamaica for coming forward to assist us. But we now need all the region because it's a regional event, and I'm appealing to the region.
Yes, it's an appeal to the region, certainly. Mr. Fennell, with all your years of experience in sports administration, and you are among quite a few, and quite well, a few we have left with all this wealth of experience, etc., in the region. What you hope, or you're hoping, that the CARIFTA Games can evolve into probably the next 5, 10 years? What it is you see as a vision for the CARIFTA Games evolving?
The vision for the CARIFTA Games is that we'll have to guarantee that they will continue and even improve. That's one. We need to have it more fixed on the developmental calendar, not just for the organization, but for the coaches. When coaches take on, in recognizing that sport is becoming very professional, we need to give these youngsters the opportunity because after their national championships, where do they go? Right? And this is another level. Not everybody will turn into a professional athlete or become a career athlete. The majority will go on to other things, but we have to give them that slot. And as you know, with young people, you have to give them a desire and a hope and deliver to them the promises that we make. So we want to see the CARIFTA Games improving. We see it leading through to Paris 2024 Olympic Games, and we see 23 and 24 as a part of that journey as they prepare that level. You see, Michael, developmental programs are very difficult to attract funding. People like the final product. When you get to the Olympic Games or when you get to World Championships and things like that, that's much easier to sell. But developmental way, you do not have the stars. You have the stars in the making, stars that are there, but people don't know them yet. It's very difficult to attract that. So we've got to make that investment. Otherwise, we'll end up with no stars. We have to see how we can spread this around the region. And we also have to pay attention to the smallest part of the region to ensure that their standards can also come up to the top people as well. Yes, I'm Jamaican and I'm from Jamaica and we have a very proud record. But we would also like to see other countries of the region having the same success as well. So we owe it to share the knowledge and experience that we have with all the others so that as a region, we bring the bottom up to all the others as well.
Well, I can say from someone who's from Grenada, that already Jamaica is, as we say, sharing the wealth. We have a number of high schoolers in Jamaica, whether it's at Kingston College, Jamaica College, St. George's, Edwin Allen. I know St. Vincent also have a number of their athletes, that's high schoolers. Also,
Yeah,
in
but they can't run for
you know,
Jamaica. You wanted all them to run for Jamaica.
well, no, but they're not running for Jamaica, but in terms of the whole development process, and getting the
No,
expertise of the
that's only
coaches
teasing.
and
Don't
etc.
take me seriously,
I
please.
know, I know. But even with Mr. Fennell, even with GC Foster, as you indicated earlier, I know of a number of coaches and others who would have passed through the GC Foster system. They would have gained their certification through the GC Foster system. So certainly Jamaica has been providing that level of assistance to the Caribbean, especially the Eastern Caribbean, because in Grenada, we have a number of graduates from GC Foster College, and certainly that's welcome in terms of how the Jamaicans have been passing on the level of expertise as well. But I don't like to have people like Mr. Fennell and others on my program without giving them the opportunity to give us an idea of their involvement in sports and sports administration. I know in the start I gave a sort of intro, but I'm certain that if Mr. Fennell has to really speak about his involvement in sports administration, achievement, etc., he probably will need about 2 hours. But we'll give him a couple minutes, Mr. Fennell, to speak about your involvement in sports administration. I know it goes all the way back in terms of sports administration back to the 70s and probably the 60s. But give us an idea of Mr. Fennell and his
Well,
sojourn in sports administration.
you didn't warn me about that, but anyhow, um, I, I suppose I started in sports mainly in swimming and water polo. And I used to play water polo, and I had the honor of captaining the Jamaican water polo team that went to 2 Central American Caribbean Games where we won silver medals. I then had the unique responsibility of captaining a West Indies water polo team when the West Indies Federation was in existence between 1958 and 1962. I don't know if people will remember that in those days it was a West Indies Olympic Committee that and a West Indies Federation team that went to the Pan American Games in '59 in Chicago, and I was a member of that as captain of the West Indies water polo team. We're no longer West Indies. That will never happen again. That was the only occasion, and it was a West Indies team that went to the Olympic Games in Rome in 1960. But I really came into the fore when I was asked to be chef de mission to Pan American Games in 1975. I was chef de mission, and then in '76 I was chef de mission to the Montreal Olympic Games. I was then president of the boxing and a member of the swimming committee in Jamaica. And as president of boxing, I then became vice president of the Olympic Committee and eventually elected president and re-elected. Those were the days when nobody wanted the position, and it was something that you had to really spend a lot of time. So it's been quite a journey as a volunteer, and my position in sport has been totally as a volunteer. I then went um, to represent Jamaica at Commonwealth Games Federation, and I was there until I was elected. It was the position was called chairman back in Victoria in 1994, where I was elected chairman, and then we renamed the position as president, and I was president of the Commonwealth Games Federation up to 2011. So I spent 17 years in that. Then I was a vice president of the Pan American Organization, Central American Caribbean Sports Organization at the regional level. And I still am active as president of the Technical Commission of Pan Am Sports, which is for the 42 Olympic committees of the region. And that has been quite an active position, and I've been asked to continue. It's not a position that I've sought. I must tell everybody that this is not something that I do not want to pass on, but they've asked me to continue to do this so that I can transfer some of my knowledge over time. Because in sport, it's important for those who have been there to transfer our knowledge to others as well. We attempt to do this, but it's amazing in the business world, you talk about succession planning and so on. But you can't plan for succession for people who are not going to continue in the sport and leave it and go to do other things. So you do your best to transfer knowledge, and it's up to the elective process to elect those people that they want to put in place. So yes, it's been a journey that's filled with many, many experiences. At the IOC level, I've never been an IOC member, but I've acted on two particular commissions for quite a long periods of time. One was the Women and Sports Commission, and also the Sports Program Commission. The Sports Program Commission, which has been really a very detailed one where you discuss and evaluate all the sports in the program, existing and new sports, etc. And I've also participated in evaluation commissions for the Olympic Games. When bids are made by host cities, you're part of a team that evaluates their competence and readiness for hosting the games before it goes to the vote. That's a snapshot of where I've been. I hope that's enough for now.
Well, that's quite a bit in terms of achievement, Mr. Fennell. But with all of that you have said in terms of your expertise, and I'm certain there are others in the region who have had that level of expertise as well. Are you satisfied or that we do have what it takes in the Caribbean, in the region? And I know you can talk about Jamaica, but you certainly have an idea of the sort of people we have within the Caribbean diaspora with that wealth of experience and knowledge that we are in a position to host major, and I say major, not just the CARIFTA Games, etc., but major international sporting events.
We're not there yet. We're getting there, and some sports are better than others, but we're getting there. As you know, we have hosted the World Netball Championships. We have hosted World Cup cricket in the region.
Yeah.
We have hosted the World Juniors in Jamaica in 2002, which was the place where Usain Bolt emerged or became a real figure. We have hosted other events, etc. And I think we need to do more in hosting because we can't always be going to other places. But the hosting nowadays requires guarantees that you don't bid for it, get it, and then later on have to cancel. And most organizations who are awarding the responsibility for hosting ask for guarantees, particularly from your governments. Our governments in the Caribbean are not accustomed to providing guarantees for that. And furthermore, they have, because of their own economic situation, have difficulty in providing sovereign guarantees. That is something that needs to be looked at because the governments also need to encourage the hosting of these events. A sports association would have limited ability to do that on their own because none of them are that financially strong. So it needs government's participation and their vision in hosting these events for their own development, not just for sport, but development for business, for tourism, and all of those things. We are a tourist region, and certainly it could be used more by the tourist authorities in hosting events in the region to add another string to our bow of tourist attractions. And we have more than any other region in the world to show with tourists, with sports activities that could become a primary source of attraction for visitors. So these are many other things that need to be done. And we also need to train our administrators more. A lot of them are volunteering their efforts, and we need to train. That's why many years ago, I participated in the development of a training program for the Olympic movement through Olympic Solidarity, and with the likes of Dr. Roger Jackson, Dr. Don Anthony, and Richard Palmer of the USA, we developed these training programs for sports administrators, which we need to emphasize more and more so that when people volunteer their time, we can assist them in becoming more efficient and more effective. These are areas that we have far more to develop, and we need to look at, just like how we're developing coaches.
Well, I want to, before I thank you, Mr. Fennell, because I know today is also a busy day, and I want to thank you for being part of our program this weekend. I can recall, and that's a lot of years ago, and that's my first interaction, involvement with Mr. Fennell back then when I was, a young sports reporter, and studying at then Carimac at UWI. You know, I recall your involvement in sports at the administration level, and I think there was a program where you presented certificates. But that's a lot of years ago, Mr. Fennell. More than I can tell you, it's more than 20, 25 years ago. But I recall that. But finally, Mr. Fennell, in terms of assurance or reassurances to the public of Jamaica's readiness to host the 49th CARIFTA Games in Kingston over the Easter weekend, your final thoughts on that?
Again, let me confirm, yes, we're ready. That does not mean we don't have a lot of detail yet to put in place and the ticketing arrangements, etc. We're still working on that continuously, and we're going to ensure that we can present. We need to emphasize that all the other 26 countries, in our virtual meetings with them, there's a level of excitement and hype that I've never seen before. The interest in these CARIFTA Games are good, especially as it's happening at a time when we're all trying to emerge from COVID pandemic. Not only because of that, but because of this essential movement to get out of this doldrum that we've been in. But the athletes are waiting on this. The athletes are looking to the leaders to present them with the opportunities for them to develop and display their talents. And we should not deny the athletes of that opportunity. There's a lot of excitement in the region. They're looking to us hosting us there, and we're going to be good hosts and have a fantastic CARIFTA Games.
Thank you very much. What a way to end, Mr. Fennell. I want to thank you once again for being part of the program. Quite a lot of information there. Nice to know that Jamaica is back in staging CARIFTA Games. Its last time was 2011, and I'm certain that the Jamaicans are ready to show the Caribbean and the world that it's always ready and willing, even at the last minute call, to host a successful CARIFTA Games. Thank you very much, Mr. Fennell.
Thank you, Michael, for having me, and thank the listeners for participating, and keep tuned in. We'll give you more.
Right. Thank you very much, folks. That's Mr. Mike Fennell, live from Kingston, Jamaica. Busy Mike Fennell, though, giving us the happenings of what's taking place in terms of the preparations for the CARIFTA Games, no doubt. Coming up Easter weekend in Jamaica, and as he indicated, Sportsmax will be the host broadcast for the CARIFTA Games. And I know when it comes to CARIFTA Games, Mr. Fennell says it's not so much a spectator, but I know for Grenada, I can tell you, there's a lot of interest in the CARIFTA Games in Grenada, and I know of folks in the diaspora who also usually will travel to the region. So I wouldn't be surprised that even the Jamaicans themselves probably will be looking to go home for CARIFTA Games, because they normally want to support track and field. They go home for boys and girls champs, they go to the pen relays, and I know they travel also for the CARIFTA Games. Like the Bahamas, they charter flights and get their athletes and spectators and media, everyone there. So there is hype, I can tell you, there is hype for CARIFTA Games, and we will continue to promote the CARIFTA Games, because, as Mr. Fennell says, it's very, very important. CARIFTA Games is very important for the the development of our young people, not just the competition, but the socio-economic of our young people. Okay, when we looked at people like
may I remind you
okay,
that the event will be professionally recorded by Sportsmax, and each of the places where we are can inquire from your television or cable people what arrangements they're making to link with the event.
Okay, then. Well, that's good to know. Very much good to know. So, as you indicated, yeah. So, folks, you have the opportunity to view the games, which, however, so you can contact your well, in this case, you can contact your association, your respective association, to get all the information because, as Mr. Fennell indicated to, that they have regular updates with the member federations, so you can get all the information regarding that. But I'm glad to know that the hype is there. I know COVID and other things would have preoccupied a lot of folks, but glad to know that we're back into the fold of the sports, and CARIFTA Games is one of those that I'm certain will sort of give us a sort of push, you know, for getting back to some level of normalcy. Folks, thank you very much. Thank you once again for being part of our program this weekend. It has been a very exciting week. Don't forget, there is cricket in Grenada, the third day of the third and final test between West Indies and England. That is on in Grenada. And then next, well, as we enter the month of April, the focus, no doubt, will be on, first of all, boys and girls champs. There's also outdoor track and field championships starting in earnest, college scene. So a lot of our Caribbean athletes will be competing here and there around the United States in particular. There's also almost every weekend there's a meet in Jamaica, so you can follow the exploits of your respective schools. I know somehow there are Grenadians who support Edwin Allen and support Jamaica College and Kingston College. I don't know how, but they do, and things like that. But it's all in the spirit of sports, and it's glad to know that in the Caribbean, it's almost as, a family. And even though Jamaica is leading in terms of track and field, there are a lot of folks who follow it, and glad to know that. Thank you very much once again for being part of the program. And the invitation is just to join us on Thursday evening when we have another program. Hopefully, I'll let you know during the course of the week who it is will be on our program. But what I can tell you, we will continue our countdown to the CARIFTA Games. We hope to have Mr. Mike Sands at some point in time, and also Mr. Keith Joseph, who heads the technical committee, as we get closer to CARIFTA Games. Thank you very much once again. Enjoy.